What's up guys, and welcome to another eBay Miniature Rescue. Today we're going to focus on Gloomspite Gitz, and specifically Squigs. Here's the little guy we're going to focus on today, starting with Vallejo Surface Primer Skeleton Bone. Normally I'd use a white primer to get a really bright red, but since we're going to be going back and forth between white and red, and I'm out of white primer, this is what we're going to start with. Using Vallejo Game Color Off-White, I'm going to spray from a top-down position to give it a highlight on the top and leave the underside darker. Using Corn Red, I'm going to spray over the entire model. The two whites are going to give it a highlight and a shadow at the same time. Going back to Off-White, I'm going to spray from the top down again to set us up for an even brighter red. Using Evil Sunz Scarlet, go over the white and a little bit of the top near the face to kind of brighten that up. And the white underneath is going to make sure that those edges that we caught are going to be the brightest they can be. Using Squig Orange, I dry brush from front to back. Using Kislev Flesh as another dry brush, I focus on the face and lips. Now for a wash of Carroburg Crimson. After I washed the model, I went back and did the last two steps, only lighter, mainly focusing on the face, doing a dry brush of Squig Orange and Kislev Flesh. Using Kislev Flesh again, I edge highlight the lips and layer the gums. Kislev Flesh and Cadian Flesh Tone are really good highlights for pretty much any deep red, especially when you dry brush it. But taking Kislev Flesh here, I go over all of the pretty standard face things, you know, like wrinkles and the nose and, you know, eye sockets, things like that. I also take the opportunity to check if there are any scars on the model, because some of these squigs have some damage and cuts, and kind of just highlight those main areas. Using Reikland Flesh Shade, I wash over the gums and a little bit of the lips just to give it a more fleshy tone. Time to take care of the teeth and the claws using P3's Menoth White base. Menoth White base is a really good starter for white, go figure, but it tends to take 2 coats, especially over a darker color like this red. Using Seraphim Sepia, I wash the teeth and the claws. Using Agrax Earthshade, I do a more focused wash in between some of the larger teeth and right next to the gum line. Coming back with Menoth White base, I layer the teeth from about 1/3 of the way up from the bottom. Using P3's Menoth White highlight, I go from about halfway up on each of the teeth to the tip to give it its brightest highlight. What I've always found helpful doing teeth and bone and horns and things like that where you're doing this multiple layer step is to keep your paints pretty thin and let them dry completely before doing another coat, and just move up a little bit on each of the teeth as you go so that it has a nice gradient. Using Flash Gets Yellow, I dot the eyes. Using Incubite Darkness, watered down into a wash consistency, I go over the tops of some of the mushrooms. Using Dawnstone, also watered down into a wash consistency, I go over all of the rest of the mushroom pieces to give it that poison mushroom look that a lot of the Gloomspite Gits have. Using Menoth White base, I dot some of the mushroom spots. Armageddon Dust on the base, and then covered with Agrax Earthshade and Dry Brush, makes a pretty good cave floor. And once it's all done, this is what the squig looks like. I feel like this is a fairly easy paint scheme. I went into a little more detail than if I was painting, 30 or 40 at a time. I think you could, do the base coating and then dry brushing and the teeth and the claws, and you'd be pretty much good to go for a tabletop standard. But for the purposes of this video and where I like to have my armies sit, because I tend to take a long time to paint a full army, this is pretty much what I'm going to go for. Thanks again for joining me. Please subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.